Principal commitment is a very interesting concept that says in Persuasion that when people are asked to commit to something, they won't necessarily commit to something big, but they will commit to something small. Asking for a not guilty verdict from a jury right off the bat is probably too big. That's like asking them to put the big sign in front of their yard. So what do? You lead them down the golden path of commitment, inch by inch, step by step. Will you agree to listen to this one witness talk about X? Yes, I will agree to that. We believe it's very important that you listen to us talk about the police officers' work that day and whether or not they found gunshot residue. Will you listen to that? Yes, I will. Good voir dire questions. You can do it in opening statement. Even though they're not responding, you can certainly ask people to commit to things you might get objected to. Who cares? Move on. You've got the commitment, right? But once we commit them to little things, we can now move on to bigger things. And the principle of persuasion kicks in. Little things, commit to bigger things. I'm committed to you to listen to your story. It's a lot easier for them to say not guilty down the road when you ask them to, because they've committed to us. By the way, prosecutors are exceptionally good at this. Do you know when they do it all the time to us? Will you obey the law? They've locked them in to a commitment. The cognitive dissonance there is all there. It's nice. There's no dissonance. I will obey the law. Will you do all the things that they've locked them in. They've got us right there. So we have to break back and recommit them to smaller things to take them along down the road. And sometimes it might even be, will you agree to follow the law, all the law, not just some of the law, right? It just depends. The point is, it's a principle that you should follow. I love the fact that we have foremans in our juries for the following reason. They can become my ally and my enemy intentionally and unintentionally. And here's the way I love to use the principle of the foreman. I invite them during closing argument to recognize that they will choose a foreman and that informant is very important, to be the guide to help facilitate what I want them to facilitate. So I invite them to choose a foreman, which they're going to do. I then use the word guide so that the foreman gets an idea of how to be, because remember, none of these people have probably ever been foremans before or forepersons before. This is the first experience. There's not a lot of instruction on what to do. There's a little bit, not a lot. And then this is what I like to say to them. And I like to say to the rest of us, are we the type of person, that simply choose to vote with everyone else? Or are we the type of person that likes to vote our own conscience? Now, I've done two things. I put the 11 against the 1. This is what I want to do. I want to put the 11 against the 1. And then I want to obligate the 1, the foreman, to become the guardian of fairness. Because we know something, and that's this. 80% of the people will sit silent while 20% talk. It's a principle of life, and it was done in jury studies and found to be very accurate. And about 4 out of 12 will make the decision because the other 8 will follow along. And like we said at the very beginning, if we could put them all in quiet rooms, we'd get 12 different verdicts with 12 different reasons. Which is why I like to say to people, your reasonable doubts are your personal reasons to doubt. But here's what I love to say to a jury, to a foreman, and to the jury. One of you will be selected to be the leader and responsible director of discussions in the voting of this case. I love that. You're going to be the leader and responsible voting. You're challenging them. You'll be held to the highest standard to make sure that everyone gets a vote. Mr. Foreman, will you be willing to make sure that every person gets to talk? We all know that the more people talk, the crazier it gets back there, right? The more that talk, the better off we are. Get them going, right? And that's what we want the jury to do. And then we want to bring the other person in, other 11, and say to them, well, actually, I specify the case. You can read this later. But then I want to bring the other people and say, and you have a unique responsibility, the other 11 of you, to not let that foreman push people around or to let anybody push other people around. You're inviting them to break up the groupthink process. And I like this because you're challenging the notions of groupthink. Groupthink is a principle that says when people get into a group, they come up with a decision that they wouldn't have otherwise come up with, often. And by inviting the foreman to be the arbiter, and by having people challenge them, you're going to hopefully be fostering greater discussion.